You know, there's a special kind of ache that comes from trusting someone who waters your roses while poisoning your roots. In this tale, my neighbor always smiled. Until I found out what she did behind my back. Well, it's got that ache tucked deep between garden gates and whispered greetings. Before we settle in, I'd be mighty grateful if you'd tap that subscribe button, leave a thought or two in the comments, and share this tale with someone who knows what it feels like to smile through suspicion. Because sometimes the hardest truths are the ones that wave from across the street. Her smile was always too perfect, too still, like a curtain that never moved, even when the wind blew through. Every Tuesday morning, without fail, she'd clip her hydrangeas in that same pale blue robe, wave to me with her garden gloves still damp, and ask if Muffin was behaving himself. But there was something off. I felt it the way you feel a draft in a closed room. It started small. A misplaced envelope, a strange look from the mailman, a child's laughter that didn't quite reach the ears of Joy. And then came the Tuesday when I waved, and she didn't wave back. Just turned slow as syrup, and shut her door. The truth I discovered after that, mercy, it shook me right to the bone. Because betrayal doesn't always come with loud crashes or slammed doors. Sometimes, it smells like fresh lavender and speaks in soft voices. The last letter came on a rainy Thursday. No return address, but the handwriting. I'd know it anywhere. Slanted left, as if afraid to stand upright. A single page folded twice. It waited on my windowsill like a ghost. Muffin meowed at it, not a curious meow, but the kind he gives the vacuum cleaner. I brewed my tea, lavender and honey, and sat by the window. The sky outside was pewter gray, like God had turned the lights down low. I opened the letter. Eleanor, I never meant for you to find out. But now that you have. I stopped there. My hand trembled, the tea untouched. Rain clung to the glass like tiny regrets. Across the street, her curtains fluttered. Blue hydrangeas bobbed in the wind. The smile she always wore. I never saw it again. Not after what I found buried beneath it. They moved in during the first summer after Walter passed. I remember because the neighborhood still felt too quiet without the sound of his humming. He'd always whistle when he gardened, you see, like he was singing to the roots. Her name was Meredith Cole. Petite, always crisp in her appearance, like she'd been pressed into the world from a very fine mold. Mid-40s, no husband, no children as far as anyone knew. Just her and her smile, wide, polite, as smooth as polished bone. The real estate agent said she came from Savannah. I said, well, mercy me, that's practically family, and brought over a basket of peach muffins and a mason jar of lemon balm tea. She called me Miss Eleanor with a honeyed lilt, and before long we were swapping flower cuttings and cookbooks like old school friends. We weren't what you'd call close, but there's a sacred kind of closeness in being neighbors. You share morning nods, second-hand mail, the occasional borrowed egg, and in our case, the quiet comfort of parallel lives. I'd see her tending to her hydrangeas, pale as moonlight, always in that blue robe. She'd wave, "Ide baba," and we'd go back to our lives. But little by little, odd things began to pile like unclaimed letters. The bird feeder I'd hung went missing, not once but twice. My garbage bin was tipped over more than once, and the lid always went missing. A strange scratch appeared down the side of my car, like a deliberate swipe, low and thin. But I said nothing, because the smile was still there, and the muffins I brought her were always returned with a thank you card and a sprig of mint. I thought maybe the world was just fraying a little at the edges, not unraveling, just loosening. Until one morning, I caught her in my yard. She stood still, barefoot, fingers wrapped around my mailbox as if she were reading its secrets through the metal. When she noticed me, she didn't flinch, just smiled. "Oh, morning, Miss Eleanor. I was just admiring your begonias." Begonias. But my begonias were in the backyard. That's when the seed of doubt was planted. And mercy, it was a seed that grew roots fast. The first real crack in the veneer came with a phone call. One that rattled my bones more than it ought to ve. It was from Mr. Hathaway down at the post office. A gentle old soul with thick glasses and a voice like warm cornbread. "Miss Ellie," he said. "I just wanted to confirm. Did you pick up that package last Thursday? The one from your daughter in Nashville?" My heart stilled. "No," I said slowly. "She said she sent it priority." I never got a notice. A pause. Strange, he muttered. The slip was marked, delivered to resident. Signed. Here, I have the signature. Looks like M. Cole. I sat down right there on the kitchen stool. My tea had gone cold. Now, my dear, there are two ways to handle betrayal. You either rush into it like a fire, or you circle it like a vulture, waiting to see if it moves. I chose the latter. That night, I stared across the street at her house. One light glowed in the front room. The same light that never seemed to go out. Curtains drawn. Blue hydrangeas motionless in the dark. I didn't say a word. Not even when I spotted the package 2 days later, in her recycling bin, half covered by gardening catalogs and an empty box of shortbread cookies. It was unmistakable. My daughter used floral tape, the green kind she knew I liked. I reached in, pulled it out like a bone from a shallow grave. Empty. Except for a crumpled page from the cookbook I'd lent Meredith 2 weeks earlier. My name was written on it. Ellie's lemon chess pie. My hands shook. The next morning, she waved like always. Too sweet. Too easy. And I began to wonder. How long had she been stealing from me? Not just things, but moments, privacy, the soft trust between neighbors. And mercy me, why? You ever felt your own home turn against you? That week, I started noticing things I'd overlooked. The squeak in the floorboard by the back door sounded sharper. The key under the ceramic frog on my porch, the one I'd foolishly told her about one autumn evening after a glass of wine, felt suddenly dangerous. The upstairs window, the one that stuck during storms, had been nudged open a 1/4 inch. Muffin wouldn't go near the front room anymore. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. Old. Maybe even forgetful. That's what she'd say if I confronted her, wouldn't she? Oh, Miss Ellie, bless your heart. You probably just misplaced it. But I wasn't imagining the perfume. It showed up like a shadow in my foyer one afternoon. Something powdery and too floral. Not my scent. Not anything I'd ever owned. I stood there, breath held, staring at the entry rug like it might give up a clue. That night I set a trap. Just a small one. I placed a single earring on the edge of the hallway table. Gold with a tiny sapphire. Walter gave it to me our first Christmas. I never wear it now, not since I lost the other. But it sparkled in the lamplight, unmistakable. The next morning it was gone. And in its place a tiny white card, no note, no name. Just a drawing of a key. Hand-sketched in ink. Like something out of a child's puzzle book. I sat down hard on the settee. The rules had changed. She wasn't just taking things, she was playing with me. And mercy, my dear, that was the moment I stopped feeling afraid. Because I realized this wasn't random. It wasn't madness. It was personal. The kind of personal that grows roots in secrets and blooms in someone else's silence. It was the church bulletin that cracked her open. I'd nearly tossed it with the rest of the week's papers, but something made me stop. Maybe the feel of the ink, maybe the note tucked inside. It was folded twice, tucked into the prayer requests section like a whispered sin. The handwriting was tight, anxious. Please pray for Meredith C. She's struggling to control her urges again. Urges. That word sat heavy in my chest. I drove down to St. Joseph's that afternoon, my gloves still on. The receptionist was new. A young girl with sad eyes and glitter on her nails. Oh, Miss Whitford, she said. You here for the rummage sale? No, darling, iraplia. I'm here to ask about a woman named Meredith Cole. Her face changed. Just a flicker. But enough. Are you a relative? No, a neighbor. A friend once. She hesitated, then leaned forward. Her voice dropped to a whisper. She's on the watch list, ma'am. Father Carl says not to speak of it, but folks VE been warned not to let her volunteer alone with the collection boxes. My stomach twisted. She steal. The girl just nodded, then added, almost as an apology, she gets this look real calm. But father says she's taken more than just money in the past. That night, I checked my bookshelf. A first edition of Wuthering Heights gone. A brooch from my mother's jewelry box missing. A Polaroid of Walter and me from 1968, usually tucked behind the frame on the mantel, nowhere. It wasn't about value. It was about me. About taking what I held dear piece by piece, until I questioned whether any of it had ever been safe. The next day I crossed the street. Her hydrangeas had started to wilt. I knocked once. No answer. But from inside I heard it, my own voice. From an old cassette tape I'd made for Walter's birthday one year. Me reading Annabel Lee like he'd loved. She had it. She had it. That night I called the police. The officer who arrived was young, kind eyes but unsure. He introduced himself as Officer Daryl Monroe, said he'd grown up 3 streets over and remembered buying lemonade from my stand back when he still had braces. I offered him tea. He declined. "I just need to take a statement, Miss Eleanor," he said gently. "You sure you want to file this?" I handed him the crumpled package, the photo of the recycling bin, and the church bulletin with Meredith's name circled in trembling red ink. "I'm sure," I said. "And she has a tape, a personal one. My voice is on it. I heard it from her living room." He nodded, took notes, asked if I had cameras. I shook my head. Didn't think I'd need them. I thought I had a neighbor. That night, I sat by the window again, my Bible in my lap but unopened. Across the street, her porch light blinked on and off, like a nervous habit made of electricity. I thought about calling my daughter, but what would I say? "She's stolen pieces of me," I'd whisper. "And I don't know how many are left." The next morning, I heard the knock. Firm. Measured. When I opened the door, there she was. Meredith. Hairpinned, cardigan buttoned all the way to her throat. But the smile gone. In its place, a rawness I'd never seen in her eyes. Like something had broken inside, and was bleeding out through her pupils. "I know you called," she said. "They've already talked to me." I didn't answer. She pulled a plastic bag from her purse. Inside, my tape, the brooch, the photo of Walter and me. Carefully wrapped, as if they were evidence or heirlooms. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered. I get lonely. I wanted to feel close to someone good. And that's when I lost it. The grief, the fear, the slow erosion of trust. It came out of me in one long, steady sob. I didn't scream. I just stood there, crumbling like wet bread. "You took me," I said, "piece by piece." She looked down. "I know. And then mercy me." She stepped forward and did something I never saw coming. She hugged me. Soft. Like she'd been waiting to do it for years. I didn't hug her back. Not that day. The days that followed felt like walking through a house that didn't quite belong to me anymore. Everything was still in its place. The curtains, the kettle, the way the floor creaked near the pantry. But nothing felt safe. Even Muffin grew quiet, curling tighter than usual, eyes always watching the door. I thought about forgiveness. I did. But every time I passed that photo of Walter and me, now returned but somehow stained by her touch, I felt something sour rise in my throat. Not hatred. No, I don't think I'm capable of that. But grief. Grief for a version of me that still believed her smile was real. Officer Monroe came back that Sunday. "We've talked with Meredith," he said, standing awkwardly on my porch. "She's confessed to, well, most of it. Petty theft, trespassing. But she's agreed to psychiatric evaluation instead of jail." I nodded. "She ever done this before?" His eyes met mine. "We think so. There's a file in Savannah. Similar patterns. But no one pressed charges. Until now." I closed the door on his words like I was shutting out winter. Across the street, her curtains stayed drawn for weeks. No blue robe. No clipping hidrangeas. No wait. I started locking everything. Every door. Every window. The key under the frog was gone. I threw it in the river that runs behind my garden. Changed the locks. Bought a camera. And still, at night, I would wake from dreams where she stood in my hallway, holding my brooch, whispering my name like a hymn. Some part of me wanted to believe she meant no harm. That she was sick. That maybe she really did just want to feel close to someone good. But mercy, my dear. Being needed isn't the same as being loved. And there are some kinds of trust that, once shattered, don't ever hold again. I didn't go to church for a while. Didn't attend bridge club. Didn't stop by the library. Didn't answer the phone when my daughter called. Just listened to her voicemail over and over. "Mama, are you all right? Please call me back." But I wasn't all right. There's a kind of silence that wraps around you not like a blanket, but like gauze. The sterile kind, meant for wounds you're not ready to look at yet. My home felt quiet in a way that wasn't peaceful. It was hollow. The blue hydrangeas across the street began to brown. No one clipped them. No one waved. Meredith's mail piled up. The trash bin stayed full. Lights blinked sporadically at night, like the house itself was trying to remember what living felt like. Once, I thought I saw her shadow through the glass, but it could have been memory. Or guilt. People in town started to ask, "You and Miss Cole still thick as thieves?" Someone joked at the pharmacy. I just smiled, lips pressed tight. Muffin stuck closer to me than ever, like he knew something inside me had gone quiet. We moved through the days together. Coffee in the morning, soup at night, the slow rhythm of survival. And through it all, the question haunted me. Why me? Why my porch, my home, my trust? I kept her note, the one with the key sketch. Sometimes I'd take it out and trace the lines with my fingertip, trying to decipher the meaning. Was it an apology? A clue? A game? Or was it just another theft? This time, of my sense of safety. They say silence heals. But mercy me, sometimes it just echoes the ache louder. The turning point didn't come with a knock or a call. It came with a dream. I was standing in my garden, barefoot in the early morning dew, when I saw Walter. He was young again, in his work shirt and suspenders, holding a tin watering can. He smiled, gentle and tired the way he always did after a long day. "Ellie," he said, "you're letting the weeds take root." I woke up gasping, my hands clenched around the Afghan like it was a lifeline. That morning, I stepped out into the garden for the first time in weeks. The roses were overgrown. The marigolds had browned at the edges, and the air smelled faintly of mildew. A sadness left too long in the sun. But I started pruning. Not because I felt strong. Because I needed to remember what my hands were for. Each snip of the shears was like reclaiming a piece of me. I thought about the version of myself before Meredith. The neighbor who baked for new families, who left cards on porches, who trusted that kindness wasn't a trick. And I grieved her. Truly grieved her. Because I knew she wouldn't be coming back. But maybe, just maybe, someone stronger would take her place. That night, I looked in the mirror and saw all the small lines around my eyes, the silver in my hair, the birthmark on my wrist Walter used to call my rosebud. I touched it, as if remembering who I was beneath all the fear. And for the first time in months, I wrote in my journal. She didn't ruin me. She rattled me. But mercy, I am still standing. It arrived without warning, tucked between the grocery circulars and a coupon book for window treatments. A letter. No return address. Just my name, Eleanor Whitford, written in a hand that had once pretended to be neat. The same hand that had left a drawing of a key on a card and once returned my things as if they were loaned, not stolen. I sat at the kitchen table, turning it over like a fragile thing. Muffin brushed against my ankle, then sat, tail curled neat, as if he too was waiting. I opened it. "Dear Miss Eleanor, I'm leaving. Not just the neighborhood. The state. They say healing starts when you stop lying to others and to yourself. I've done both for too long. I wanted you to know that I never hated you. I never meant to hurt you. I wanted to feel loved by proximity. And you with your soft porch light and your hummingbird feeders and the way you say people's names like prayers. I wanted to be close to that warmth. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I needed to say I'm sorry. For stealing. For trespassing. For making you afraid. I'm trying now. Please be safe. Please stay kind. M." I folded the letter slowly. My throat ached with something I didn't quite have a name for. She was gone, or soon would be. And though my heart didn't soften all at once, a quiet mercy cracked open in me like the first thaw of spring. Not because she deserved it, but because I did. Later that week, I found a package on my porch. Inside was a new bird feeder. Handmade. Sturdy. Painted the same pale blue as her robe. Tied to it was a scrap of muslin. An embroidered thread. "For what's still yours." The next morning, I hung the bird feeder. Hands steady now, movements sure, like I was stitching something back into place. The birds came quick, like they'd been waiting. Sparrows mostly, a few cardinals, one particularly plump blue jay who fussed at Muffin through the window. I watched them for hours. And I began to breathe deeper. I didn't remove the lock I'd installed. I kept the cameras, too. Trust, once broken, doesn't rebuild itself overnight. But I opened the windows again. I let sunlight back in. I let my daughter come visit. She brought pie. We sat on the porch sharing slices of sweet potato with cinnamon whipped cream, and for the first time I told her the whole story. From the missing package to the photo, the hug, the letter. She held my hand when I finished. "I'm sorry you went through that alone," she said. "I had muffin," I replied, and we both laughed. The mailbox creaked that afternoon, not from Meredith, but from sweet little Jackson, the neighbor's boy down the street. He was delivering a thank you card for the cookies I'd baked him last week. On the envelope, in crooked crayon, "Miss Ellie, you are nice." That night, I lit a candle on the windowsill. Not for her, but for me. For the part of me that had grown strong in the silence. For the woman who'd been rattled, yes, but not ruined. And as I rocked gently in my chair, with Muffin purring beside me and the birds just beginning to hush into sleep, I whispered something into the quiet. "I forgive you, Meredith. But I remember." It was early spring when I saw her again. I was visiting my niece in Asheville, wandering through a quiet farmer's market filled with fresh blooms and fiddle music. I turned a corner near the jam booth, and there she was. Meredith. Her hair was shorter now. The crispness was gone from her blouse, and she moved slower, like someone learning how to take up space again. She was alone, holding a small clay pot with violets in bloom. Our eyes met. For one long breath, neither of us moved. Just two women standing still in a world that had kept turning without our permission. Then she stepped forward. "Miss Eleanor," she said softly. "You look well." I nodded. "So do you." She held out the pot. "These reminded me of your garden." I didn't take it, not right away. But I did let my hands drift toward it, slow and deliberate. The violets were healthy, gentle, unassuming. "Thank you," I said. "They're beautiful." She looked relieved, like she'd been holding her breath since we'd locked eyes. "I go to meetings now," she added. "Twice a week. And I teach art at the community center." "That's good," I replied. "I'm glad." We stood there a moment more, not as friends, not even quite as neighbors anymore, but as two women who had come through something sharp and found their edges softened by time. "I never stopped feeling sorry," she whispered. "And I never stopped being changed," I said. Then she smiled, not the mask she once wore, but something smaller, quieter, human. We didn't hug. But when she walked away, I realized I was still holding the pot of violets. And my hands weren't shaking. Spring lingered kindly that year. The kind of season that warms from the inside out, coaxing dogwoods into bloom and neighbors back onto their porches. Children returned to chalk drawings and bicycles, and laughter once again felt like a thing that belonged on our street. I planted the violets Meredith gave me in the back garden, near the rose arbor Walter built. I didn't tell anyone where they came from. Some things, my dear, are better left unspoken and simply allowed to grow. The blue hydrangeas across the street had withered entirely. The house sat empty now, a for sale sign out front, swaying with the breeze like a tired flag. I watched the realtors come and go, listened to potential buyers stroll the sidewalk, none of them knowing the story that seeped through those walls. But I did. And I'd learned something else, too. I'd learned that healing wasn't neat. It was messy and crooked and full of days when your breath caught for no good reason. But I also learned that I could endure more than I thought. That even after betrayal, a heart could keep tending to its own soil. I started writing again. Not just journaling, but real stories, things I hadn't dared touch since Walter passed. Fiction mostly. But in every tale, there was a house, a porch, a neighbor, a woman with silver hair, and a cat that watched the world like it owed him answers. And always, there was a moment when something was taken, and something greater was found. One evening, I mailed a copy of a short story to the community center in Asheville. No return address. Just a sticky note clipped to the front page. Sometimes the broken things bloom anyway. Last week, I saw a young couple move into Meredith's old house. They had a baby, all gums and giggles, and a golden retriever with a tail that could clear a coffee table in a heartbeat. I watched from my porch, a cup of tea in hand, as they struggled with a too large couch and waved off help with the kind of enthusiasm only the young possess. Later that evening they rang my bell. We're the Langstons, the woman said. We just wanted to introduce ourselves. I smiled, genuine and warm. Welcome to the street, I said. I'm Eleanor. Folks call me Miss Ellie. They handed me a small tin of cookies, oatmeal raisin, slightly overbaked but full of care, and the man added, if you ever need anything, don't hesitate. I thanked them, my heart full in a way I hadn't felt in a long while. As they turned to leave, I caught sight of something new in their yard, a hanging bird feeder, painted soft blue, and beneath it, violets bloomed in quiet defiance of the past. Muffin hopped onto the windowsill behind me, tail flicking. The light was soft golden, the kind that makes even old things feel sacred. And in that moment I knew. This place, this porch, this life, this tender scar of a memory, it was mine again. Not untouched, but undeniably mine. If my neighbor always smiled, until I found out what she did behind my back stirred something in your own story, maybe a lost trust or a surprising thaw. Please do leave a comment below. I'd be honored to hear how you found your way back to your own porch light. Share this with someone who's ever felt rattled by betrayal and still managed to bloom anyway. And if you'd like to settle in with another tale soon, you know where to find me. Subscribe, my dear, and we'll meet again under kinder skies.